Hello and welcome to True Pathfinder, your portal to health and truth. Millions of people are being prescribed SSRIs or antidepressants to take care of their depression, and this is because of the supposed link between serotonin and depression. It's in the name already. SSRI stands for Selective Serotonin Reuptake Inhibitor. So, does serotonin depletion really cause depression? Or, to put it another way, can SSRIs cure depression? Well, let's find out by looking at the scientific evidence. The serotonin hypothesis of depression has been influential for decades and still is to this day. It postulates that depression is associated with lowered serotonin concentration. The idea that depression is the result of abnormalities in brain chemicals, particularly serotonin, provides an important justification for the use of antidepressants. And the link between lowered serotonin and depression was first suggested in the 1960s and widely publicized from the 1990s on with the advent of the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or SSRIs. And although it has been questioned more recently, the serotonin theory of depression remains influential, with principal English language textbooks still giving it qualified support, leading researchers endorsing it, and much empirical research based on it. Surveys suggest that 80% or more of the general public now believe it is established fact that depression is caused by a chemical imbalance in the brain. Many general practitioners also subscribe to this view, and popular websites commonly cite the theory. A study that looked at all of these health websites found out that in the 39 websites they researched, they all mentioned the benefits of antidepressants without exception. 74% of them attributed depression to a chemical imbalance or claimed they could fix an imbalance. And the majority of these health websites misrepresented also the risk of SSRIs that have been proven beyond doubt, namely sexual dysfunction, emotional numbness, and an increased suicide risk amongst all age groups. It is often assumed that the effects of antidepressants demonstrate that depression must be at least partially caused by a brain-based chemical abnormality, and that the apparent efficacy of SSRIs shows that serotonin is indeed implicated. Other explanations for the effects of antidepressants have been put forward, however, including the idea that they work via an amplified placebo effect or through their ability to restrict or blunt emotions in general. And despite the fact that the serotonin theory of depression has been so influential, believe it or not, no comprehensive review has yet synthesized the relevant evidence. Well, until now that is, because very recently in 2022, a new peer-reviewed study published in the prestigious medical journal Molecular Psychiatry did just that and looked at 17 very carefully selected studies to determine whether the serotonin hypothesis holds any water. Before we look at the fascinating results of this very well done study, let's discuss the main supporting arguments that are used consistently to provide support for the serotonin hypothesis of depression. Number one has to do with serotonin and the serotonin metabolite 5-HIAA. And it says that lower levels of serotonin and 5-HIAA in body fluids can be found in depression. The second argument has to do with receptors. It postulates that serotonin receptor levels are altered in people with depression. The third argument has to do with the serotonin transporter, also known as SERT, and it postulates that there are higher levels of serotonin transporter in people with depression, which would lower the synaptic levels of serotonin. Then we have the so-called depletion studies. They claim that tryptophan depletion, which again lowers available serotonin, can induce depression. Then we have the argument concerning the SERT gene. It states that there are higher levels of the serotonin transporter gene in people with depression. And then we have the claim that there is an interaction between the SERT gene and stress in depression. So the researchers from this study looked at all of these 6 factors. They looked through all of the available medical literature and scientific research, and from hundreds and hundreds of studies, according to very strict criteria, they selected 17 that met this very strict criteria, and we will take each one of these points by itself and see what they found out. But before we do that, short reminder, if you enjoy our content, please support us directly by becoming a patron from as little as $5 per month. Link is in the description box below. Also, do not forget to like, share, subscribe if you're not already, and comment to help the channel grow and spread the truth. For the holistic care you need and deserve, please contact us at christine.doctor. Wherever you are in the world, we can help you. We can assess your condition remotely and will develop a natural holistic healing approach that is customized for your needs. And check out some of the most powerful holistic health tools available on the market today at vibrantbody.net. Links are, of course, also in the description box below. Alright then, let's go through the results of this study, starting of course with serotonin and 5-HIAA. Serotonin can be measured in blood, plasma, urine, and CSF, but it is rapidly metabolized to this 5-HIAA. CSF is thought to be the ideal resource for the study of biomarkers of putative brain diseases, since it is in contact with the brain interstitial fluid. However, collecting CSF samples is invasive and carries some risk, and hence large-scale studies are quite scarce. They still found 3 studies that fulfilled the inclusion criteria, 1 meta-analysis of 3 large observational cohort studies of post-menopausal women, and it revealed lower levels of plasma 5-HT in women with depression, which did not, however, reach statistical significance after adjusting for multiple comparisons. Sensitivity analysis revealed that antidepressants were strongly associated with lower serotonin levels independently of depression. 2 meta-analyses that were also analyzed of a total of 19 studies of 5-HIAA in CSF found no evidence of an association between 5-HIAA concentrations and depression. Let's move on then to the second main argument for the validity of the serotonin depression link, and it has to do with receptors. There are 14 different serotonin receptors that have been identified with most research on depression focusing on the 5-HT1A receptor. Since the functions of other 5-HT receptors and their relationship to depression have not been well characterized, the researchers restricted their analysis to data on these 5-HT1A receptors. These 5-HT1A receptors are also known as autoreceptors, and they inhibit the release of serotonin presynaptically, and therefore, if depression is the result of reduced serotonin activity caused by abnormalities in the 5-HT1A receptor, people with depression would be expected to show an increased activity of 5-HT1A receptors compared to those without. Two meta-analyses satisfied the researchers' inclusion criteria involving 5 of the same studies, and the majority of results across the two analyses suggested either no difference in 5-HT1A receptors between people with depression and controls, or a lower level of these inhibitory receptors, which would imply higher concentrations or activity of serotonin in people with depression. Both meta-analyses were based on studies that predominantly involved patients who were taking or had recently taken, within 1 to 3 weeks of scanning, antidepressants or other types of psychiatric medication, and both sets of authors commented on the possible influence of prior or current medication on their findings. In addition, one analysis was of very low quality, including not reporting on the numbers involved in each analysis and using one-sided p-values, and one was strongly influenced by 3 studies, and publication bias was also present. Next, we move on to the serotonin transporter known as SERT. It transports serotonin out of the synapse, thereby lowering the availability of serotonin in the synapse. Animals with an inactivated gene for SERT have higher levels of extracellular serotonin in the brain than normal, and SSRIs are thought to work by inhibiting the action of SERT and thus increasing levels of serotonin in the synaptic cleft. Although changes in SERT may be a marker for other abnormalities, if depression is caused by low serotonin availability or activity, and if SERT is the origin of the deficit, the amount or activity of SERT would be expected to be higher in people with depression compared to those without. And overall, the data analyzed indicated possible reductions in SERT binding in some brain areas, although areas in which effects were detected were not consistent across the reviews. In addition, effects of antidepressants and other medication cannot be ruled out, since most included studies mainly or exclusively involve people who had a history of taking antidepressants or other psychiatric medications. Only one meta-analysis tested effects of antidepressants, and although results were not influenced by the percentage of drug-naive patients in each study, numbers were small, so it is unlikely that medication-related effects would have been reliably detected. All 3 reviews cited evidence from animal studies that antidepressant treatment reduces SERT. None of the analyses corrected for multiple testing, and only one review was of very low quality according to the researchers. If the results do represent a positive finding that is independent of medication, they would suggest that depression is associated with higher concentrations or activity of serotonin. The researchers then looked at the tryptophan depletion argument. Tryptophan depletion using dietary means or chemicals such as PCPA is thought to reduce serotonin levels, and since PCPA is potentially toxic, reversible tryptophan depletion using an amino acid drink that lacks tryptophan is the most commonly used method and is thought to affect serotonin within 5 to 7 hours of ingestion. Questions remain, however, about whether either method reliably reduces brain serotonin and about other effects, including changes in brain nitrous oxide, cerebrovascular changes, reduced BDNF, and amino acid imbalances that may be produced by the manipulations and might explain observed effects independent of possible changes in serotonin activity. The data that was looked at from studies involving volunteers mostly showed no effect, including a meta-analysis of parallel group studies. In a small meta-analysis of within subject studies involving 75 people with a positive family history, a minor effect only was found, with people giving the active depletion showing a larger decrease in mood than those who had a sham procedure. Across both reviews, studies involving people diagnosed with depression showed slightly greater mood reduction following tryptophan depletion than the sham treatment overall, but most participants had taken or were taking antidepressants, and participant numbers in the studies were also very small. Since this research syntheses were conducted more than 10 years ago, the researchers then looked for a systematic sample of 10 more recently published studies that you can see here in the table on the right. And they found 8 studies conducted with healthy volunteers, and they showed no effects of tryptophan depletion on mood, including the only 2 parallel group studies. One study presented effects in people with and without a family history of depression, and no differences were apparent in either group. 2 crossover studies involving people with depression and current or recent use of antidepressants showed also no convincing effects of a depletion drink, although one study is reported as positive mainly due to finding an improvement in mood in the group given the sham drink. What about SERT gene and gene stress interactions then? A possible link between depression and the repeat length polymorphism in the promoter region of the SERT gene, specifically the presence of the short repeats version, which causes lower SERT mRNA expression, has been proposed. And interestingly, lower levels of SERT would produce higher levels of the synaptic serotonin. However, more recently, this hypothesis has been superseded by a focus on the interaction effect between this polymorphism, depression and stress, with the idea that the short version of the polymorphism may only give rise to depression in the presence of stressful life events. And unlike other areas of serotonin research, numerous systematic reviews and meta-analysis of genetic studies have been conducted, and most recently a very large analysis based on a sample from 2 genetic databanks. Although some earlier meta-analysis of case-control studies showed a statistically significant association between the 5-HTT-LPR and depression in some ethnic groups, 2 recent, large, high-quality studies did not find an association between the SERT gene polymorphism and depression. These 2 studies consist of by far the largest and most comprehensive study to date, and a high-quality meta-analysis that involved a consistent reanalysis of primary data across all conducted studies, including previously unpublished data and other comprehensive quality checks. So, we've just gone through all of the 6 main arguments for the hypothetical serotonin depression link. What can we conclude from the results? Well, I let the researchers speak on that. Quote, "Our comprehensive review of the major strands of research on serotonin shows there is no convincing evidence that depression is associated with or caused by lower serotonin concentrations or activity. Most studies found no evidence of reduced serotonin activity in people with depression compared to people without, and methods to reduce serotonin availability using tryptophan depletion do not consistently lower mood in volunteers. High-quality, well-powered genetic studies effectively exclude an association between genotypes related to the serotonin system and depression, including a proposed interaction with stress. Weak evidence from some studies of serotonin 5-HT1A receptors and levels of SERT points towards a possible association between increased serotonin activity and depression. However, these results are likely to be influenced by prior use of antidepressants and its effects on the serotonin system. The effects of tryptophan depletion in some crossover studies involving people with depression may also be mediated by antidepressants, although these are not consistently found. The chemical imbalance theory of depression is still put forward by professionals, and the general public widely believes that depression has been convincingly demonstrated to be the result of serotonin or other chemical abnormalities. And this belief shapes how people understand their moods, leading to a pessimistic outlook on the outcome of depression and negative expectancies about the possibility of self-regulation of mood. The idea that depression is the result of a chemical imbalance also influences, of course, decisions about whether to take or continue taking antidepressant medication, and may discourage people from discontinuing treatment, potentially leading to lifelong dependence on these drugs with their many well-documented negative side effects, such as an increased suicide rate, a lower sexual drive or libido, and emotional numbness. The authors of the study close with the following statement. The huge research effort based on the serotonin hypothesis has not produced convincing evidence of a biochemical basis to depression. This is consistent with research on many other biological markers. We suggest it is time to acknowledge that the serotonin theory of depression is not empirically substantiated. So, here you have it. Now you can make an educated decision about whether it is wise or not to take SSRIs, antidepressants. I'll let you come to your own conclusions. I'll show you what the scientific evidence points to. You probably can assume what my decision would be. And with all that being said, I hope that you've enjoyed this presentation. If you did so, please support us directly by becoming a patron from as little as $5 per month. Link in the description box below. Also, do not forget to like, share, subscribe if you're not already, and comment to help this channel grow and spread the truth. For the holistic care you need and deserve, please contact us at christine.doctor. We can assess you remotely and will develop a natural holistic healing plan just for you. And check out some of the most powerful holistic health tools available on the market today at vibrantbody.net. Links are, of course, as always, also in the description box below. Thank you very much for your attention, and until next time, stay healthy.